Our first presenter today is Jennifer Delisle. Birdwatching is for everyone, and especially over these last few months, a lot of people who have found themselves with more time on their hands than usual have passed some of that time watching birds. Jennifer has been interested in birds since she was 9 years old and has been on the board of the Jayhawk Audubon Society for 20 years. She'll be sharing some tips and tricks to help anyone be a better birder. So let's turn it over to Jennifer.
Okay, hello and welcome. I guess there's not much more that I need to say about myself. I am going to show a brief PowerPoint presentation, a few slides to kind of get you started thinking about how to be a better birder. And then I'm going to spend some time showing you some electronic resources. And I think especially nowadays, we're kind of geared into looking at our computers and finding resources to help us do what we want to do. And there's a lot out there for the birder. So I'm going to see how this goes. Okay, birding is for everyone. And I think sometimes people think that it's for old people, but it's for everyone. And there are a lot of young people and a lot of good opportunities for young people to get started in birding. So how do you get started? Well, you need some equipment, and you don't need very much equipment. So you need a pair of binoculars. That's kind of a given. You can look at birds in your yard, and maybe they'll come up to your bird feeders, so you don't really need to have binoculars, but sooner or later you're going to want to see the bird that's a little bit farther away. And so a pair of binoculars is going to help you out. And first and foremost, you need to learn how to focus your binoculars. You can't just go and use another person's pair of binoculars. It just doesn't work. You need to be able to focus your binoculars for your particular vision. And there are some resources online that will tell you how to do that. Or when you buy a new pair of binoculars, there's a little guide that comes with them that will also show you how to focus in your binoculars. On this slide, you can also see a notebook. A notebook is very handy, and I'll explain what you use the notebook for as we go along. There's a picture of a spotting scope here. You don't necessarily need a spotting scope. That's probably for a little bit more of an advanced birder to help look at birds that are, say, on a lake or farther away. But I'm not really going to focus on that type of birding today. You need a field guide. There are lots out there. These are the ones that, some of these are the ones that I would recommend. And there are a lot of books, and I think this is a big source of confusion for a lot of people. You really need to have a book that's going to help get you to where you want to be. A lot of guides condense the number of birds that that are in the book. But
Jennifer?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You'll need to share your screen so they can see your slides.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. I guess I forgot to do that, didn't I? Okay. Okay. All right, can you see that? Let's see.
Yes, your PowerPoint's up now.
Okay. Well, now you can see my books, right? Okay. The National Geographic Guide to Birds is the one that I recommend most. That's the one that is used by a lot of birders, both professional birders and amateur birders, and it's a guide to birds of North America. And it has information not just about how to identify the birds, but a little bit about habitat as well. The Sibley Guide is a little bit more advanced. It's a larger book, so it's not something you necessarily want to take with you when you're out in the field. And but it has more detail about various plumages of birds, and so it gives you a broader range of any particular bird, some variations in how they might look to you. And the Kansas Birding and Birding Hotspots has some fabulous photographs by Bob Gress, and it also shows you some places where you can go to see some really cool birds. Not necessarily a great field guide because it's photographs which don't necessarily always show you exactly what you need to know in order to be able to identify a bird, but it's a beautiful bird and it's very helpful for birding in Kansas. The Peterson Guide I put out there because that's the bird book that a lot of people think about. There have been a lot of advances in bird guides, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that one. So read the field guide. It's got a lot of good information in it. Read it at the beginning part of it, and you'll learn a lot just in those few pages about things that will help make you a better birder. So 4 keys to identification. This is all you need to know about birding, about identifying birds. Size and shape, the color pattern, behavior, and habitat. And these 4 keys will get you to narrow down your bird into a specific group. Your field guide is organized by relatedness, by taxonomy. And so once you get your bird, your mystery bird, down to a specific group, then you can kind of fine tune that and find the exact species that you're looking at. So the first thing that we want to look at is how big is your bird? And this is not an easy thing necessarily to describe. So we describe size in relation to well-known birds, particularly a robin, a crow, something like that. And so how big is your bird in relation to, say, a robin? We use silhouettes because, as you know, a lot of times when we're looking at birds, we don't get a great look. And sometimes we're looking so that they're backlit and we really can't see the color very well or something like that. So we want to be able to look at those shapes and sizes. So here's a good example of a different variation of size. So size is the size of the bird, but also the size of various parts of the bird. Does a bird have a long tail? Does it have a big beak? And this is a good example of 2 birds that look, for all intents and purposes, the same. One bird is bigger than the other, but you might not actually, if you're not looking at them side by side, you might not actually be able to say which is the bigger one. But look at those bills. The bird on the right has its bill that's about the same size as the width of its head, whereas the other one, the one on the left, has this little tiny bill. It's nowhere near the size of its head. Now the one on the left does have a little red spot on the back of its head, but that's not diagnostic because they both have that. It's the males have the little dot of red and the females don't. So these birds look a lot the same, except big bill versus little bill in relation to the size of the head tells you that the one on the right, which has the larger bill, is the hairy woodpecker, and the one on the left with the shorter bill, that's the downy woodpecker. So color's hard. Color's hard because it's different depending on what the light is like and a whole bunch of different components. So for color, oftentimes we talk about color patterns of light and dark. In this case, I would say underneath it's lighter on its back. It's darker, and yes, it's sort of yellowish. The head is clearly gray. So those are things that you would write down in your notebook. So let me say something about the notebook, which I think when I found out about the notebook, it became very helpful. When you're out looking at birds, you've got your bird book and your binoculars. Binoculars, you're looking up at the bird, then you're putting binoculars down, then you're coming over here and you're getting your book and you're flipping through the book and you're trying to find, of course, then the bird's gone. So what I would recommend is you're looking at the bird and you're saying to yourself, how big is it? what do I notice about the patterning of the color? And then some of the other things I'm going to talk about. And you write those things down in your notebook in as much detail as you can. And then afterwards, the bird's going to go away. And then afterwards, you'll want to then look in your notebook, look in your guidebook and see if you can find something that looks like that. Here's another bird. You would say, okay, it's kind of brown, but look at that head. Look at how heavily patterned that head is. That's a real striking feature of this lark sparrow. So again, you can't tell from this photograph. It's a little bit smaller than a robin, not a lot smaller, a little bit smaller than a robin, but it's got this heavily patterned head. Behavior is also really important. This bird on the right going down the tree trunk, you don't see that very often. That's a diagnostic feature really for this bird, the white-breasted nuthatch. You just don't see very many birds walking down the tree trunk. On the left-hand side, we have a brown thrasher, which you see in the leaf litter on the ground a lot of times, just kind of going through the leaf litter. So behavior is really important. And then tied with behavior is habitat. So a bird that's in the trees all the time versus in the leaf litter versus at a lake or something like that. So that's another important thing to record in your notebook, where you see the bird. Flight patterns sometimes can be helpful. Woodpeckers have a really distinctive up and down kind of flight pattern. So you can see them when they're coming into your yard. If it's doing this, chances are that it's a woodpecker. Goldfinches make a noise. They do that same kind of thing too, but they go retreat, retreat, retreat. There aren't very many birds that do that. So that's something that you would want to put in your notebook. Also, what are they eating? This is a really good diagnostic for a lot of birds. What are they eating? This cedar waxwing is, oddly enough, in eastern red cedar, eating some nice cedar berries. And so paying attention to what birds eat is important. And on the website for the Jayhawk Audubon Society, we have a list of birds that are found in the Lawrence area, common birds, and what they eat. And there are other places you can get that information too, which I'll talk about. Another thing to notice on a bird is singing. Now, it's really hard a lot of times until you really get used to it to be able to identify birds by song. But this dickcissel, holy cow, this bird sings all the time. It sings at night. It sings throughout the hottest part of the day. It's singing and singing, and it's really loud. And so that can help you also identify birds. Once you get down to bird groups, okay, is my bird a sparrow? Is it a woodpecker? Is it a finch? Then you can start looking at the smaller characteristics of it. And in this case here, I have 3 sparrows. They're all, if you looked at them, you'd say they're light underneath, they're brown, they're little brown birds. But they do have diagnostic characters, and this is where you get down into looking at eye stripes, crown color, and things like that. And so here we can see with this one, it's got a dot. It's got a dot in its center breast. And it's only here in the winter too. So that's the American tree sparrow. This is a chipping sparrow with a really nice chestnut crown. And then our ubiquitous and really annoying house sparrow. So let me run through with you some sites to help you with your own identification skills. This is all about birds. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology, a fabulous site, pretty much have everything you need to know. If you go to this place here where it says birding skills, you'll go through basically what I just told you about the keys to identifying birds. I want to show you the Merlin identification app.
Jennifer,
yes.
You'll need to change your share screen so they can see your websites.
Oops, where is it? Let me see, how do I get there? Let's see. I forgot how to get there. Where's the, hold on a second, where was I? Zoom. Oh, here it is. New share. Okay. Oops, not that one. Here we go. Okay, you got it?
Yes.
Yes, we see it now.
Okay, good. Thanks. Okay, then I was going to go to, let's see, can we get this out of the way here? Oops. Give me a second. Here. Okay, real quick, going to go through, because I'm going to use up my time, going to go through an example of how to use Merlin, which you can also download for your app, for your phone. So you start by putting in where you live. I live in Valley Falls, Kansas, and today's date, because date's important. What size was the bird? And so here's where you can see, well, it was a robin size, between a sparrow and a robin, or a sparrow. I'm going to say it was a sparrow-sized bird. And it's brown. And so what was it doing? It was in the trees and the bushes. And then it's going to create a list of what birds could be here this time of year in my area that look like this. And lo and behold, it pulls up a Carolina wren, which is actually what I had in mind. So, and then if you've got a bird that's singing, you can play its song, which oftentimes, if it's a loud song, sometimes that can be a good diagnostic. Okay, let's stop that guy there. And then, so can you see now that I'm on the Audubon site?
Yes, I see it.
A lot of the same types of help for identifying birds, and a lot of other articles to help you distinguish between different types of birds that are similar and that sort of thing. One of the things that's really important is knowing what birds occur in your area. And so eBird can really help you with that. And this is ebird.org. If you go to Explore, you can explore your area, say Douglas County, Kansas. And you can look for hotspots. Those are places that birders go a lot and record what they've seen. And so these are some really good places in Douglas County that people have gone and found a lot of birds. And so you can see that at the Baker Wetlands, there have been 283 different species of birds that have been seen there. I don't know what the time period is exactly. Clinton Lake, lots of Clinton Lake, Lone Star Lake, Bircham Park. So those are places around where you can go and see birds. And if you actually click on the link to the site, it'll take you to the list of what birds have been seen there and when. And so that also is a good way to help figure out what birds you might be seeing, because chances are most of us aren't going to see a really unusual bird. It's going to be something that somebody's seen in that same spot before. And so that'll help you to kind of narrow down the possibilities, because there are 470 some odd bird species in Kansas. And this will kind of help make it easier for you. The Jayhawk Audubon Society has some resources as well, jayhawkaudubon.org. If you go to birding sites, we have basically kind of a smaller list of public areas where one can go to look at birds. And each one of these areas, if you click on it, it will tell you what kinds of birds you'll be able to see there. And I did want to put in a plug, since I work for the Kansas Biological Survey and we manage the KU field station. I want to put in a plug for the nature trails that we have that are open to the public at the KU field station. And we have a bird checklist, birds that have been seen up on our properties up north of the Lawrence Airport. And then there's some maps here on how to get there and what the trail system looks like. And we have all kinds of other things. One last thing before I use up my time, I wanted to mention that if most of us, when we think about birding, we think about going places, and you can bird anywhere. You can walk down the street and look for birds. You can bird any place, but a lot of us end up birding in our backyards. And so one of the things that we at the Jayhawk Audubon Society really try to encourage is for people to create more bird habitat at home. And we have some resources that will help you be able to do that. The Jayhawk Audubon Society, we have a Plants for Birds program that promotes growing native plants in your yard to help create bird habitat. And so that's here under our Plants for Birds module on our website. You can find a lot of good information there, including what kinds of native plants would do well in our area. But National Audubon Society has a big database of native plants for your area. If you type in your zip code, you can do a search, and the application will put up for you a list of native plants for your area that you can grow to help create bird habitat in your yard. And so this is a real quick example. You can filter by whether you want grasses, shrubs, trees, etc. But you'll come up with a list of a lot of different plants that you can grow to encourage birds. So with that, I'll be done. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be here.
If anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. I was wondering, Jennifer, as far as the ebird.org goes, can anyone add to those lists?
Yes, it's basically a citizen science application. So you probably have to create some kind of a username or something like that. But yes, it's open to everybody.
Cool, good to know.
Yes, and certainly it's something that's being used more and more by scientists, by natural resource professionals to gather information. And it is, it's monitored. I've had, me and some friends of mine have put in birds that we've seen that maybe seem a little bit out of range or out of season, and we get called on it. Somebody is QCing it. And so they'll call you and ask you if you really have a firm identification of those birds. So it can be a pretty good scientific resource.
Cool. We have one question in the Q&A. We have two. Okay, so the first one is, what's been your most exciting bird sighting this year?
Well, I have to tell you, that's an interesting question, because I have to tell you the story. The other day, I was on the east side of Lawrence picking up my vegetables for my CSA, and I'm driving through the parking lot, and there's this little bird hopping around in the gravel, and I thought, oh, it's just another house sparrow. It's just a little farm, and there's just house sparrows everywhere. And then it wasn't going very far, and so I looked out my window, and it was a Harris's sparrow. Now, Harris's sparrows are abundant in the winter, but they breed way far up north. They go up into the Arctic. And so I just thought that was really peculiar that there was this Harris's sparrow, and I thought it was injured or something and hadn't been able to fly. And I put out a message to this, there's a birders list, KS bird list, where a lot of birders, both professional and amateur, share information about what they're seeing. And Chuck Oddie, who works for the Geary County Extension Office, and he's a really good birder and he monitors bird list, he said, well, it's not totally uncommon that they can be here. So that was a really exciting to see this winter bird, to me, characteristic winter bird. I always talk about them as only being here in the winter, and then finding out that there were sporadic records of that bird being here throughout the summer. That was my exciting bird thing for this year.
It looks like, okay, 3 minutes, we have 2 more questions.
Okay, I'll try to
So first one is, what about if you encounter a bird that's not in its usual range?
Yeah, this is a good question that we get. You can actually put questions in through the Jayhawk Audubon website. And this is a question that comes in. People will say, I've got this yellow-fronted woodpecker, first record for this area. And in order to get an actual official documentation that you have a new record for a bird out of season or out of range, there needs to be really good documentation, photographic documentation. You can report that, and I would say that if you do see a bird that appears to be out of range or out of season, to go ahead and report that through the Jayhawk Audubon website, and I can help you figure out how to get that to the Kansas Birds Records Committee, which is an actual committee that keeps the official list of the birds that are seen, that are known to occur in the state. But you need to have really good photographic evidence.
Okay, super quick last question. Are painted buntings only seen here during migration?
There are some breeding records. Clinton Lake, fabulous if you get to see them because they're not that common around here, but they do breed here. Short answer. If you look at the website, yes, and well, of course, everybody knows where to go in Clinton Lake, but you know what you could do? You could go to eBird and see where they've been identified and when. You can get that information.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Sorry for some of the technical glitches.
Oh, no, it was great.
I'm learning.